Okay, next we're gonna take a look at Gradio. It's for web-based GUIs. Gradio allows you to quickly create shareable web interfaces. This is a very simple example which supports input and output app. So firstly, if you haven't, please use the pip to install the Gradio and then import the Gradio as GR. So after that, you can define your own application and functions. So here is the function greeting. The function is similar as what we did previously. Inside of greeting function, you have two parameters, name and is morning. So for the greeting, create a new one, which is good morning if is morning. So we're gonna check if is morning is true. Otherwise, we're gonna say good evening and then return the greeting which we just created here, the name, which is the first parameter inside of the greet. And after that, you can use the GR Gradio and set the interface, which often equals to the function greet, and the inputs gonna be the text and a checkbox, which gonna create it in the interfaces. And then outputs gonna be the text, which is the returning information from the greet. So we can launch it and have and generates a public URL. So here is the public URL. Later on, we're gonna try it. Inside of the name, we can put something in because the interface, it has two inputs, text and checkbox. So over here, we can say that the checkbox is morning or is not morning. And then we have the name, which is showing here. The is morning, I set is to be true. And when we click the submit, then the greet function gonna work. Like they get the name of Charlene as a first input, and is morning true or false as the second input, and create the greeting, then return the greeting and the name and show up in the output text box. So let's do it. Submit. So we can see that good morning, Charlene. If we don't check the is morning, that means the is morning is false. And then when we submit it, it's gonna say good evening, Charlene. So that's the very simple application. For the URL, instead of using it inside of our application environment, we can also type it inside of your web. Very simple and very interesting. And you can modify different functions to meet your requirement. For example, the recommend function, it has two different parameters, food type and spicy levels. Inside of the return, we're gonna return the recommended food type, put it here. Dish, spiciness, put the spicy level over here. And we can create the GR's interface. Firstly, the FN function is the recommend, and the inputs, we're gonna get a drop down of 3 different foods and the checkbox, which gonna define the spicy level. So the outputs equals to text, then we can launch it. Again, this is the URL which you want to share with me after you finish everything. So we can check the different food type. For example, check the Chinese and spicy level. Check it as yes, true, right? So the spicy level equals true sounds a little bit weird. So let's change it to something different which more fit our requirement, like the slider. So we can change it to slider. And then we can have the spicy level over here. To better fit our requirement, let's change the GR to slider. Slider, we're gonna have the mean value and the max value. Also, we can add a label. Label equals to spicy level 0 to 5. Then it's gonna show up over here. And after we run it, we can see instead of the checkbox, we have the slider, which shows the spice level. And after we change it the type to Chinese again, submit, the output gonna be Chinese dishes. Spice is what we just set over here. Previously, we used the GR interface. When the interface is simple, we can use the GR interface, but if we want to make the interface more complicated and more interesting, we might need to use the GR dot blocks. The GR dot blocks is the same thing for showing the interface, however, it allows more interesting components inside of it. So firstly, with GR dot blocks, inside the parentheses you can have different themes, but here I want to make it simple, so just to have a title for food recommender. Then this is the application, that means I'm gonna use it as a web application. For the GR markdown, here is the title, which is gonna show up later on. And then with GR row, that means the following components gonna show up inside of one single row. And after that, we're gonna have a button, the recommend button. You can give it whatever name, but make sure that the type is gr.button. Get recommendation, that is the label, and output. We're gonna have a text box for the output and it has a label for our recommendation. And then make sure that you add the click action for the button to make sure that your button is functionable. So inside of a click function, we have the recommend function, which we defined previously. And for the input, that is the food and spice. Make sure that this is the same thing as what you're gonna show up on your interface. And then your application gonna understand where to find the input. And for the output, it equals to just the output. Okay, so we can launch this app and the share equals to free sharing. After that, you're gonna get the public URL, which you can share with me later on. And let's take a look at this GUI. So for the food, which is over here, spicy, which is here, the diet, that is here, which is a checkbox. And all of those three show up in one single row. This is why we use the GR row, which we can align everything in a more clear way. So under here, we can check different things, like we can check the tolerance and vegetarian, only if or not, then get recommendation. So everything gonna show up over here. One thing to be noted, for the spicy tolerance, if we set with a lot of decimal, that's a little bit weird. So we can modify the slider of step equals to 1. That means every time when user want to change it, the step at least they're gonna be 1, which makes sure that this is integer instead of decimal or float. So see, we cannot have like 2.4 or anything similar. Okay, and then the remaining things work as usual. So let's move on to another example. The remaining things are the same. We have the GR blocks, we have the GR markdown, the GR rows. Okay, the remaining things are the same, but here I want to add an example, the GR example. Inside of the GR example, this is the list, and several lists gonna make up to be a new list. Okay, so over here, my input gonna be food, spicy, and diet. Let's take a look. After adding the GR example, we're gonna see the example over here, and there are 3 different options and 3 different spice tolerance and vegetable only or not. If you click the first one, we can see the previous selection is gonna change, right? And if we click get recommendation, it will read the previous things into this system. Or we can change it like to Mexico, and the previous selection part gonna be different as well. And get recommendation, you're gonna get the new information outside from this input area. So this is how the examples work. Let's make it more interesting. Previously, we just work with different types of text. Over here, we want to try to import some images inside of it. The GR is the same, and over here we need to use matplotlib pyplot function, library, and numpy, and inside of the recommend function, aside from food type and spicy level, try to add a new thing of image. So we need to process the image, convert numpy array for matplotlib, and then create a plot. This is optional if you want to display with matplotlib. You'll check if this image is none or not. If it's not none, you just show it over here with the title. And then return both the image and the text as usual. So inside of the Gradio interface, we still use the GR blocks, and for the GR blocks, we have a GR markdown as a title of this demo or as an app, whatever. Okay, and then we have the GR row. That means under the GR row, this part, the GR column and the second GR column, gonna work into one single row. And inside of one single row, we have several different columns. This is the first column, which contains the food type, the spicy level, image input, the submit button. And then we have the second column inside this row. We have the image output and text output. Let's see. We have one big row. The first part of this row is the input part, and the second part of the first row of this single row is the output part. And for the input part, we have several columns. And for the second output part, we have 2 different columns. And then we can select whether it's spicy or not, and we can choose to upload something from our local file. Let's see, whatever you want, and click the recommend. Recommend is a button, which is the submit button, or you can give it a different name, then click it. You're gonna call the recommend function. The input gonna be the food type, spicy level, image input. For the output, previously we just have the text output, but now we have the new image output. So inside of the image, the output part, we have the image we just uploaded, and the recommendation for the Chinese dish, spicy, yes. And over here, we can also add into our example. I want to add the example maybe inside of the column part. Maybe let me add it here. So we use the GR example, and the GR example gonna be built into my first row, the input part. And my example has the food type and spicy level. Okay, run in done. So look at here. Below the previous input part, we have the example. If we type the Italian equals to 2, it's gonna automatically change the input drop down box and the checkbox. We can also upload the image over here, yeah, like that, and then click the recommend button. So inside of the example, currently we just have 2 columns, the food type and the spicy level. You can also import the image input over here. Let's see, you have the path of the image. Okay, the second path of image, then the third path of the image, and change to like image input. So it's gonna work as that, because currently my path is invalid. You can change it to whatever path of image you like, and then you're gonna have different image show up here. So that's it. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions.